What if I told you a group of automotive CEOs, government officials, and auto parts manufacturers are making it almost impossible for you to fix your own vehicle? Manufacturers want to force you to take your car into the dealership for repairs, auto parts stores are being shut down, and junkyards that supply us with used parts we can't find anywhere else are burning down in record numbers. Right now, you're being cornered into paying a premium just to keep your car on the road, and it's only going to get worse. So in this video, I'm breaking down the 5 ways that auto manufacturers are trying to make it almost impossible for you to fix and repair your own vehicle. Today, I'm exposing the dark truth about the automotive repair industry, and it's not looking good. Let's start with a simple question. When was the last time a car actually became easier to fix? For most of automotive history, repairs were relatively straightforward. If a starter went bad, you replaced the starter. If a water pump failed, you installed a new one. If your check engine light came on, there was a good chance the problem could be diagnosed with a few basic tools and some mechanical know-how. Cars used to be simple, but today's vehicles are a completely different story. Modern cars contain an incredible amount of technology. They're packed with computers, sensors, cameras, radar systems, electronic modules, touchscreens, electric motors, and software that controls nearly every function of the vehicle. The average new car contains millions of lines of computer code, far more than most people realize. And while many of these advancements provide a real benefit, they also create more opportunity for things to go wrong. When something breaks on a modern vehicle, the repair often involves far more than simply replacing a failed part. A sensor may need to be calibrated, a module may need to be programmed, a safety system probably needs to be reset, and a component may need to communicate properly with over half a dozen computers before the vehicle will operate correctly. That complexity adds time, labor, and cost to almost every single repair. And it's not just repair costs, it gets even worse after any kind of car accident. So consider what happens after a relatively minor accident. Years ago, a damaged bumper might require some body work and a fresh coat of paint. Today, that same bumper could contain parking sensors, cameras, radar units, multiple wiring harnesses, and advanced driver assistance systems. Replacing it often means replacing electronics, performing calibrations, and verifying that multiple safety systems still function correctly. What would have been a $500 repair years ago can easily cost several $1,000s. Even routine maintenance has become more expensive. Components are often harder to access because of tighter engine compartments and more complex vehicle designs. Jobs that once took a few hours can now take several days, and diagnosing a problem frequently requires specialized scan tools and extensive troubleshooting before the actual repair even begins. Insurance companies are noticing this trend as well. Repair costs have risen so dramatically that vehicles are increasingly being declared a total loss after accidents that would have been considered relatively minor in the past.
This fender bender is hard to miss, and while it's ugly, it doesn't keep the car from driving. But when you ask your insurance company to fix something like this, you may be shocked to learn that they'll consider your car totaled.
A damaged headlight assembly can sometimes cost thousands of dollars because it now contains sophisticated electronics rather than just a simple bulb and housing. And then there's the long-term concern. As these vehicles age, all of those sensors, modules, cameras, and electronic systems will continue to wear out. Every new feature adds another potential failure point. While modern vehicles are incredibly capable machines, they're also some of the most complicated consumer products the average person will ever own. The result is a reality that many drivers are already experiencing. Repair bills are becoming unaffordable, insurance costs are skyrocketing, and keeping a vehicle on the road is more expensive than ever before. Cars today may be safer, faster, cleaner, and more advanced than at any point in history, but they're also becoming incredibly difficult and expensive to repair. And many drivers are beginning to wonder whether all that technology is creating as many problems as it's solving. But repair costs aren't the only concern. A growing number of dealers believe that automakers are slowly creating a world where your only realistic option is taking your vehicle back to the dealership. Now, manufacturers are going to tell you that's not the goal. They'll point to safety requirements, increasingly complex technology, cybersecurity concerns, and the need to make sure repairs are done correctly. But from the perspective of many vehicle owners, the end result looks the same. If you're anything like me, then you probably use your phone to run your life. And thanks to today's sponsor, Mint Mobile, there's a way to get great service without spending a ton of money. Right now, Mint has a 3-month unlimited plan that's just $15 a month. And they can do this because Mint has reimagined the wireless shopping experience and made it easy and online. There are no stores and no salespeople, so you can get premium wireless without the premium price tag. All plans include unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network, plus free calling to Mexico, Canada, and the UK. And there's also a hotspot included on unlimited plans. You can bring your own unlocked phone or shop the latest phones online with Mint. Mint's also introduced the concept of bulk buying to the wireless space. This means the more months that you buy up front, the more you save. Plans come in 3, 6, and 12-month durations. No matter which route you take, you can keep your phone number and all your existing contacts when you switch. And if you decide it's not for you, all plans come with a 7-day unconditional money-back guarantee. Stop overpaying for wireless just because that's how it's always been. With premium plans starting at just $15 a month, Mint helps you break that traditional wireless cycle. Just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to get started with Mint today. Thanks to Mint for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. Many vehicles require specialized scan tools, proprietary software, security access systems, electronic calibrations, and manufacturer-specific procedures that simply didn't exist a generation ago. Even experienced independent repair shops can struggle to keep up because every manufacturer has its own systems, its own software, and its own ever-changing requirements. And this isn't just something the critics are saying. Recently, Ford CEO Jim Farley made comments that caught the attention of a lot of car enthusiasts. He essentially acknowledged what many drivers have been noticing for years. Farley said he could work on an old Ford Bronco himself. He understood it, he could diagnose problems, replace parts, and keep it running. But when it comes to newer Fords, that's a completely different story.
I think Ford's position is very reasonable. We're really a big advocate for the ability to repair a vehicle, but it has to be done at a reasonable cost.
You don't want people repairing their own vehicles?
No, that's fine. Not for warranty work, though. These are very complicated cars, and I mean, I have no problem working on a '73 Bronco. To work on a brand new Bronco, I need all sorts of specialty tools. That's something that we would put people's lives at risk.
Today's vehicles contain so much technology and require so many specialized tools and systems that even the CEO of one of the world's largest automakers admitted that working on them is far more difficult. If the head of Ford says he can wrench on an old Bronco, but wouldn't realistically work on a new one, what does that say about the average vehicle owner? Think about that for a moment. For decades, one of the biggest advantages of car ownership was independence. If something broke, you had options. You could fix it yourself, you could get help from a friend, even a local mechanic can handle a job. The vehicle was yours and maintaining it was largely within your control. Today, that independence feels like it's shrinking. Many repairs now require access to systems that the average person just doesn't have. Some procedures require manufacturer software, others require expensive calibration equipment, and some repairs can't even be completed until electronic systems from the dealer communicate with manufacturer databases, and verify that everything's been installed correctly. The average driver isn't going to spend thousands of dollars on specialized tools to repair a single vehicle. And most small repair shops can't justify purchasing every proprietary tool and software subscription from every manufacturer either.
If a certain manufacturer requires a $40,000 a year subscription, we're just not going to service those cars because we don't have enough volume of that specific vehicle to afford the subscription.
As vehicles become more computerized and connected, many drivers worry that the traditional relationship between people and their cars is changing. The days of fixing problems in your driveway with a basic toolbox may not be completely gone, but they're certainly becoming harder to find. And if getting repairs done is becoming more complicated, finding the parts you need is becoming a completely separate challenge all in itself. One of the biggest problems facing people who own older vehicles today isn't repairing the vehicles. It's finding the parts to repair them in the first place. And unfortunately, this isn't some theoretical problem that's years away. It's already happening right now. I kind of know about this firsthand because my sister's daughter is a teenage driver and she has a '99 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's not exactly an antique, and it's not a classic car from the 1960s. Not some rare collector vehicle, it's just a regular Jeep that millions of Americans drove not that long ago, and a lot of people even drive today. So recently it needed a replacement part, and normally you'd think that wouldn't be a huge deal. Find the part, install it, and get it back on the road. Except that's not what really happened. That Jeep has now been sitting in the repair shop down the street from my sister's house for nearly 3 weeks because finding the part has been incredibly difficult. Shop after shop has searched for it, suppliers have checked inventory, and online sources have even been searched. Used parts have been considered, and the biggest issue keeps coming back to the same thing: the age of the vehicle. The reality is that once a vehicle reaches a certain age, manufacturers will sometimes stop producing many of the components needed to keep it running, and part suppliers sometimes even stop keeping them on the shelf. What was once a common replacement part slowly becomes harder and harder to find. At first, it means waiting a few extra days. Then it means searching nationwide. Then it means that hoping a used part can be located somewhere. Eventually, it means that part simply doesn't exist anymore. And that's the concern many vehicle owners are starting to have. Millions of Americans depend on older vehicles because they're affordable, familiar, and often paid off. Not everyone wants a $50,000 or $60,000 car payment. Many people would rather keep maintaining the vehicle they already own. But that becomes difficult when the part supply slowly starts drying up. Every year, more older vehicles reach the point where critical components are no longer readily available. Some parts can be rebuilt, some can be salvaged from donor vehicles, some can be reproduced by aftermarket companies, but many simply disappear from the market altogether. And when that happens, a vehicle can become almost impossible to repair. Not because the engine failed, not because the transmission exploded, but because one relatively small component can no longer be found. That's a scary thought when you consider how many people rely on older vehicles every single day, because finding parts for a '99 Jeep Grand Cherokee is already becoming really difficult. What's it going to look like 5 years from now, or even 10 years from now? At some point, the question may no longer be whether you can afford to repair your vehicle. The question may simply become whether the parts still exist at all. And things are going to just get even worse. As if finding parts for older vehicles wasn't already difficult enough, there's another problem quietly making things worse. We're losing the very places that supply those parts. For decades, junkyards and salvage yards have been the lifeline that keep older vehicles on the road. When a manufacturer stopped making a part, when the dealership couldn't get it, or when a new replacement simply didn't exist anymore, there was always a chance you could find what you needed sitting on an old vehicle in a salvage yard somewhere. For many older cars and trucks, junkyards aren't just convenient, they're essential. And that's why a recent fire in Idaho caught the attention of so many car enthusiasts. Just days ago, a massive wildfire tore through the famous L&L Classic Auto Salvage Yard near Wendell, Idaho. Reports indicate the fire swept through a yard containing thousands of vehicles, many dating back from the 1920s all the way through to the 1980s. Estimates suggest more than 8,000 vehicles may have been affected by the blaze.
We had 10,000 cars. And if you look at 90% of the inventory, we probably lost 9,000. There's not one part of this yard that wasn't affected somehow by this fire.
These weren't just old junk cars waiting to be crushed. Many of them represented decades worth of hard-to-find parts that owners relied on to keep classic and older vehicles running. The important thing is that nobody was hurt. But for the automotive community, it's still a tremendous loss. Because when a salvage yard burns, it's not like a parts store that can simply reorder inventory. Many of those parts are gone forever. That old fender on a '72 pickup? Gone. That dashboard piece for an '85 sedan? Gone. That obscure bracket, trim piece, or wiring harness that hasn't been manufactured in 20 years? That's gone too. And unfortunately, the Idaho fire isn't the only example. Over the years, junkyards across the country have been destroyed by fires, redevelopment projects, environmental regulations, raising land values, and simple economics. Maintaining huge inventories of old vehicles is expensive, and many family-owned yards have completely disappeared. The result is that every year there are fewer places to find the parts needed to keep older vehicles alive and on the road. This creates a problem that many drivers don't think about until it affects them personally. A vehicle may still run perfectly, the engine may be strong, the transmission might be fine, but if one critical part breaks and nobody makes replacements, the entire vehicle can end up parked indefinitely. That's what makes salvage yards so important. They're not just piles of old cars, they're rolling warehouses filled with replacement parts that often can't be found anywhere else. And when thousands of those vehicles disappear overnight, it becomes one more reminder that keeping older cars on the road is getting harder and harder every single year. Because the real threat to many older vehicles isn't that they'll wear out. It's that the parts needed to keep them alive may disappear first. And if you've been wondering why older vehicles are getting harder to find, why used parts are becoming scarce, and why affordable first cars seem to have completely disappeared, many enthusiasts point to one program, Cash for Clunkers. Officially known as the Car Allowance Rebate System, the program was launched in 2009 during the financial crisis. The idea was simple. Drivers could trade in older vehicles and receive government incentives towards the purchase of a newer, more fuel-efficient vehicle. On paper, it sounded like a win. New car sales would increase, fuel economy would improve, and older vehicles would be removed from the road. And that's exactly what happened. Nearly 700,000 vehicles were traded in under the program in the United States alone. But there was one major catch. Those vehicles couldn't simply be resold. Instead, many were totally destroyed. Engines were disabled, drivetrains were rendered unusable, and vehicles that may have continued driving for years were permanently removed from service. At the time, supporters of Cash for Clunkers said that these vehicles were old, inefficient, and nearing the end of their lives anyways. But critics disagreed. They argued that many of the vehicles being scrapped were still perfectly functional transportation. They may not have been glamorous, but they were affordable. They were the type of vehicles that students, first-time drivers, working families, and lower-income Americans could actually afford to buy. And once they were gone forever. The impact wasn't limited to complete vehicles either. Every vehicle that was destroyed also represented a source of used parts: engines, transmissions, body panels, interior components, electrical systems, and thousands of other parts that could have kept similar vehicles on the road completely disappeared. Now fast forward more than 15 years. Today, people are wondering why inexpensive used vehicles are so difficult to find. They're wondering why a basic used truck costs $60,000, and they're wondering why parts for older vehicles are becoming harder and harder to find. Obviously, Cash for Clunkers isn't the only reason. Vehicle prices, inflation, supply chain problems, manufacturing changes, and shifting consumer preferences have all played a role. But many automotive enthusiasts argue that removing hundreds of thousands of vehicles from circulation certainly didn't help. And it wasn't just in the United States. Similar vehicle scrap programs appeared in the UK and several other European countries. Different names, different rules, but the same basic concept: encourage people to trade in their older vehicles and remove them from the road. The result was millions of older vehicles disappearing worldwide over several years. Looking back, what makes the debate so interesting is that nobody can go back and undo it. Those vehicles aren't sitting in storage anywhere waiting to return. The parts aren't coming back, and the affordable used cars that once filled dealership lots and local classifieds are completely gone. And when you combine Cash for Clunkers with shrinking part supplies, disappearing salvage yards, and increasingly complex modern vehicles, you begin to understand why so many drivers feel like affordable car ownership is becoming almost impossible. Because sometimes the biggest impact of a government program isn't what happens immediately. It's what people notice 15 years later when they suddenly realize all the cars they used to depend on are no longer there. When you step back and look at the big picture, it's easy to see why so many drivers are concerned. New vehicles are becoming more complicated and more expensive to repair. Older vehicles are becoming harder to keep on the road because parts are disappearing. Salvage yards that once supplied those parts are vanishing, and programs like Cash for Clunkers permanently remove hundreds of thousands of vehicles that could still be helping drivers today. None of these issues by themselves would be a major problem, but together they paint a troubling picture for the future of affordable car ownership. So I want to know what you think. Have you struggled to find affordable parts for older vehicles? Do you think repair costs are getting out of control? And do you think programs like Cash for Clunkers just did more harm than good? Let me know in the comments below. If you made it this far, I'm Matt with MotorFeed. Please subscribe to this channel, hit the like button so more people can get this information, and I'll see you in the next video.